Welcome to our match of the day and week 2 of the LEC Spring Split. I'm Aaron Medic Chamberlain, and joining me to make the medicine that will cure all of your ills, it's Indiana Foskett in black. I wrote that joke and I can't even keep a straight face while saying it.
He told me he wasn't going to do it too. I was like, it's a stretch. It doesn't even work. It's fine.
It was still funny though.
Sure.
Anyway, we're here for Vitality up against Fnatic. Both teams with a lot to prove after disappointing week 1.
Yeah, and I feel like I was very much aligned with Vedius on the analyst desk, kind of talking about the different win conditions for both these teams. I want to see a much more early game proactive from Fnatic. I feel like that's where they stumbled a little bit. You know, Nemesis maybe playing a little bit too safe, maybe not getting the same synergy that he would with Broxah or Broxah, you know, taking a tank-oriented jungler in game number 1, we'll say that loosely, and then sweepy swapping to Lee Sin in game number 2, and that's what I want. I want more Lee Sin, more World Championship Broxah, and more aggression. Vitality on the other side, it's time to clean up some of those individual performances. You know, the fact that Attila dies 2v2 on that Vayne, need to clean that up in the lane phase, and as well as some of these macro mistakes around the Baron.
I think the Baron was a big sort of a sore thumb in Vitality's playstyle, because against Schalke they went back there 3, 4, 5 times before they were actually able to do anything around it, and in the end when they did something, it's pretty bad because Schalke capitalized on it. I know that a lot of that doesn't come down to just Vitality though, because Schalke on the other side of that coin did play it very well. So
yeah. And it's also the recognition from Vitality to look at their composition, the fact that it was a Yasuo and Urgot and Victor, so very short-range champions. They really were reliant on the Baron to be sure that they could siege into these structures since they didn't have a traditional ADC there. It was just about that setup, you know, cleaning up those issues so you can't just get poked away by Ezreal or engaged upon by Lissandra. So kind of the next step and the next evolution of a maturing Vitality around their vision game.
Well, we are going to jump on into picks and bans for Vitality versus Fnatic. First game of week 2, of course. And I think we say that both teams have a lot to prove. I think Fnatic will think they've got a little bit more to prove than Vitality. Although they had a slow start, it was a very slow start. The games that they lost were against teams that you wouldn't really usually expect them to lose against, whereas Vitality had moments where they looked really strong. Their early game actually in that first game against Schalke looked really good. It's just they weren't quite able to put the pieces together to close it out.
And I think it's just, again, this idea of growing pains. You know, Vitality relied so much on the early aggression of Kikis, and now they have a brand new jungler in Mowgli. Of course there's going to be synergy issues there in such, as Yamato Cannon puts it, a delicate role in League of Legends. On the other side, losing Soaz and Caps is always going to hurt. It doesn't matter if you're a championship premier organization like Fnatic, there's going to be a growing pains moment where you need to start synergizing with Nemesis, you need to warm Bwipo back up, and you need to figure out how you're actually going to play in this meta.
Well, we expect them to come out of the gates a little bit more aggressively this game. Last week we saw Vitality go for sort of more scaling junglers in the form of the Sejuani in both games. She can do stuff in the early game, but much more around that level 6. If we see Fnatic go for something more aggressive, do you think Mowgli will be forced onto a skirmish jungler in the early game, or can he still play on his tank?
It's actually really scary. If you look back at Vitality's composition, a lot of those champions actually really thrived after their initial back, and so while you can look at a pick like Sejuani and say, this is a 5v5 deathball composition, it's about playing post level 6, the reality is that Vitality's composition in the lane phase on initial items, you think like Victor. Victor has very low econ efficient buys, so after his first back, he's very strong in the lane. Same thing with like the likes of the Yasuo and the Urgot. Vitality were actually very strong in the lane phase. It was around the mid game that they started to stumble. So I don't necessarily care about the play styles of how Fnatic's early game will match up with Vitality's, because I think that can go either way. It's going to be really dependent on matchup. I want to see Fnatic just play their game. Just be comfortable around Nemesis. Turn off the nameplates. It doesn't matter that it's Vitality. Look at Nemesis, look into Brox's eyes and say, mate, I'm with you. I'm here.
So we do have a couple of issues with Champion Select, which is why at the moment the Vitality members are Test 1, Test 2, but I can promise you this is the Champion Select that is going on right now. So Vitality have banned out Rakan, Aatrox, and Akali. You've got the Urgot, Sejuani, and Cassio bans on the side of Fnatic. Vitality first picked the Aurelia, Xin Zhao and Lucian for Fnatic. And quickly, before you break this down for us, I just want to explain why we're doing this to everyone at home. This is to avoid the Champion Select lag that we had last week. So we're going to try and make sure we do not have to have any Champion Selects remade today, which is why we have these tests on the screen instead of the player names.
Exactly. So kind of sinking our teeth into this draft because it is going quite furious. The first thing that I want to point out is, again, Fnatic's priority on the Lucian for Reckless. Reckless said it in his interview just a few moments ago. He was talking about how I have to step up, I'm going to carry, maybe I'll pick the Tristana. It's not the Tristana, it's just as good in this meta though, it's that Lucian. So again, Reckless saying, I'm not going to take a step back and play the Jhin, I am going to be the carry of this team because they need a leader.
But look at the power coming out on the side of Vitality. You talk about carry potential, you've already got an Aurelia, you've already got a Jace. We're still on patch 9.1, so you haven't seen some of those nerfs come through. And alongside that, you have a hard engage in the form of the Alistar. This seems like a very good lineup already.
Yeah, and it's about cutting the map differently. So you have the priority of Fnatic with the bot side, the Lucian Braum. Everyone knows how powerful this combo is. On the other side for Vitality, it's almost all about the top side of the map. It doesn't matter where that Aurelia and that Jace are going to flex. You would imagine that Mowgli is going to spend all of his time ping-ponging between Jiizuke and Cabochard to get Vitality going on these very assassin-oriented picks.
Cabochard had such a good game on the Jace last week as well, so wouldn't be surprised to see that going into his hands. Now, second ban phase, we start to see some of those flex picks isolated away. The Karthus removed. Vitality, and looking across the board here, there aren't as many powerful picks left open for them. Where do you think they're going to go with these bans?
I mean, there's a lot of safe picks like the Gallios, the Lissandras, as well as the Scions. I expect Galio and Lys to be pinched here. In terms of jungle picks, though, with the Xin Zhao being taken away, Camille's the one that really stands out. And in the LEC, we didn't see a lot of Camille priority. I think it was Maxlore who played it, and that was really about it. But if you look at the LCK and if you look at the LPL, Camille is everywhere. And again, part of that is because of how prominent Galio is in the meta and how well they synergize together. But Camille still ticks all of those boxes of being a very aggressive playmaking oriented jungler.
And you've got so much follow-up if you get it on the side of Vitality as well. You know, an Alistar coming in after that, the Aurelia as well with the Vanguard's Edge, the long-range poke from the Jace can do a lot of work. There's the Victor ban from Fnatic. They're respecting that bottom lane laning phase out of Attila and Jacktron. Now, final ban for Vitality. Looks like it's going to be the Ornn. Could be towards the top lane. Have seen a few Ornn supports, but with a Braum locked in, you'd expect that to be a top lane pick for Whippo.
Yeah, and again, trying to minimize a lot of this engage potential. That was the other thing that Fnatic's compositions were struggling with. It was to find that engage. They had that Akali and that Scion comp. Whippo kept playing out to the side lanes, but they needed Akali to play the side lane. So watching their lane assignments.
The Galio was locked in straight away for Fnatic. Gives you a little bit more follow-up engage, at least, if not primary engage tools. Vitality hovering at the Vayne here, played that well last week. The Kai'Sa also a very strong AD carry, so giving up a bit of that bot lane priority that we talked about, allowing Fnatic a strong bot side of the map, but saying, okay, we'll take a scaling AD carry and try and play it into the late game.
Yeah, and it has great setup again with the Alistar, his ability to proc Kai'Sa's ultimate so she can very quickly reposition in fights. But right now, Vitality have what I call a bridging composition. It means at every point in the game, early, mid, and late game, they have a champion that they can look to as their power point. So Kai'Sa taking over the late game, Jace taking over that mid game.
And there's the Gragas finally as well for Mowgli. It fits into the sort of the Sejuani basket in my sort of estimation of junglers. You know, bit of utility, okay clear, can get some early ganks off as well, strong in team fights, seems to just do everything that Sejuani does in a slightly different way. And
again, it works really well with Kai'Sa. You have a long range displacement that if he throws the cask, if they want to play it aggressive, you can immediately proc that depending on how far ahead you are on the Kai'Sa and get her into the assassination backline.
Final pick for Fnatic is the Poppy to round out their composition. Still don't see a huge amount of engage on that team. Maybe the Poppy running forward with the Galio chase, but we did wonder a little bit as to whether Fnatic would have enough engage in this lineup to fight up against the Vitality poke and relatively strong disengage.
And for me, again, it's the fact that Fnatic look very clear in their game plan, which is still around the bottom side of the map. It's pretty obvious, post level 6, Galio is going to try to roam down, you have the Xin Zhao, but I want them to stick to the game plan, which means that Whippo can no longer die solo in those 1v1s and start to tilt that map. On a pick like Poppy, he should be very safe, especially when you look, again, the Jace, the Gragas, the Aurelia. You expect everything to be thrown at Whippo, so he just needs to survive and soak up attention so that Reckless and Hilly can really pop off in bot.
We'll have to keep our eyes on that. Of course, Nemesis was one of the key points of Fnatic that struggled last week on the Galio. He'd been given quite an impactful role in this game. Needs to be getting down towards the bottom side, needs to be pushing up the lane. Last time he fell quite far behind because of how safe he wanted to play that mid lane.
I mean, everyone's going to say that Nemesis is playing too safe, and when you compare him to the likes of Caps, it is a very different playstyle, but the reality is that he's not getting priority in the draft phase. Fnatic aren't setting him up for success by making sure he's getting the counter pick. In fact, in all of his matchups against SK and Origin, Nemesis got counter picked. It was that Vayne into the Galio, trying to have the Akali into a Lissandra, so he didn't have a lot of potential to really shine.
It's interesting you say that, because I entirely agree, and it seems to be what Nemesis's role was on Mad Lions as well. It was much more about Selfmade and Whirlip getting ahead, Crownshot getting ahead on that team, whereas Nemesis, when we saw him in EU Masters, would play things like the Galio. He had one very good Kassadin game in the Iberian Cup, but ever since then has been much more utility, control mage sort of mid laner. And my question is to you now, Frost, as we wait just to get through the second round of pick and ban so we can make sure everyone gets in properly. How... If you're Fnatic here and you have this all eggs in the Reckless basket composition, we said it's all about the bot lane prio, it's all about getting Reckless ahead, you even prioritized him with the Lucian pick early on, and you're playing against a bridging comp who are strong at all points in the game, how do you mitigate your portions of relative weakness to your opposition?
It's about Broxah recognizing when and where he's strong on the map and kind of planning out, okay, I'm going to go here at this point and here at this point. I can't touch, let's say the top lane at this point, which, to be frank, you can gank top lane early, especially if you want to kind of tilt that Jace matchup, as I believe it was Jace who was slotted up there. So maybe there's a potential that, depending on Brox's pathing, is like, okay, Lucian and Braum, they're going to be fine. They're going to push in. I have this small window before Jace can start really being a bully in this matchup and try to get some kill pressure on. Or I completely ignore it. Maybe my laners, because I have Galio and Lucian Braum, are always pushing forward. And instead of just ganking lanes repeatedly, I'm disrupting Mowgli.
Broxah, of course, the jungler that really set Fnatic alight across the course of the World Championship. Probably, in my opinion, the best jungler at Worlds for the majority of the tournament. Not for the finals, of course, we don't talk about that as much, but really excelled and came into his own at that World Championship. Vitality, the other team that really showed up at Worlds as well, they kind of defined the meta. Even though they didn't get out of groups, they were the team that everyone was talking about.
And it was playing champions and styles that make them comfortable. Play your style, the Vitality effect on the World Championship. But this iteration of Vitality, while it still is quite explosive and you're still seeing some of those high mechanical ceilings that we expect of kind of the next generation of European talent in this squad, it almost seems like a turning point or the next chapter Vitality. Yeah. So they're trying to learn new plays for their playbooks or teach an old dog new tricks.
I totally agree with that. When we were discussing Vitality before we came into week one, we were talking about this sort of raw, this unadulterated Vitality. They'll do what they want, they'll be explosive, they're a firecracker of a team. And in week one, it felt very much more like they were trying to play League of Legends by the numbers. They were trying to do like Korean League of Legends, where you play this part of the map properly, then you play this part of the map properly, and you do everything by this kind of textbook. And the reason they had been so good in the past was you never knew what they were going to write. They didn't draw within the lines. They didn't color the colors you expected them to. It was all over the place, and it's what made them so passionate and so impactful to watch.
And talking to Yamato on Euphoria when Dracos and I had him there, he said that he wanted to teach Vitality how to play perfect League of Legends. And that's not the sense of like that beautiful macro dance that we associate this idea of perfect league with Korean League of Legends. Yeah. It was the fact that there was no longer going to be a weakness in his squad that you would use a band-aid to compensate for, that he wanted the squad to be good at everything. So this is a growing or maturing moment for Vitality. They seem confident that they're going to take the title at least either spring or summer. And I'm just excited to see how high Vitality can soar.
Or will they fly too close to the sun and have their wings burnt off? That's the question you always have to ask. Like we've talked about it with Fnatic in the past, with how well Caps was playing last year, whether or not they would crash and burn when they made it to the finals, and in the end they did. We talked about it with the super teams in Misfits and G2, whether you've got too many strong voices on the same team, and whether maybe Vitality here, that's not their style. Like, you can teach them to play perfect League of Legends, but do you want to cage the beast, or do you want to let the beast just be explosive and uncaged across the map?
You just want to control the explosion medic. That's the thing. You never want to try to teach a player to be aggressive. That has to be inbuilt. That bloodlust, you can't train that, but you can harness it, and that's what Yamato wants to do with Vitality.
Well, we'll see if the shackles are on for Vitality or whether they have been able to direct that explosive force that we know and love from them. We are going to jump onto the Rift in just a second's time, I believe. We managed to rotate through that second round of pick and ban to get everything sorted. Didn't have any crashes out, which is always a good thing as well.
Nailed it. Cross your fingers. Nothing
well, see, now I've
yet.
said it. Now I've said I've kind of cursed it slightly for skewing, but no. I do see players on Summoner's Rift, so we should be jumping on into that in just a second. Let's talk a little bit about the exact win conditions for these teams, because we've talked about the bridging composition, how you have strength across the entirety of the game here for Vitality, but if they're going to win the game, what are their steps? What do they do first? What do they do second? How do they actually close out a match?
Dominate the lane phase. These champions can springboard so heavily in the lane phase. Jace, Aurelia, and Gragas. I want to see Mowgli everywhere on this map.
Well, we'll have to see if he's able to do that, because last week he had an incredibly high kill participation. I think it was up in the high 80%, 83% kill participation at the 15-minute mark. But already, Reckless is catching out Attila. Lucian, obviously the stronger AD carry early on.
And this is Fnatic just recognizing that they have the stronger level 1. It often happens when you have Braum, you throw Lucian on top of it, it was always going to be bad times. But I love the confidence of Fnatic to march into Vitality's jungle, to lay down the vision and start to say, we're going to track this jungle pathing, we're going to figure out what your moves are going to be, and we're going to set Broxah on the right foot with the right information.
Only unleashes Broxah to have more of an impact in the early game. On this Xin Zhao with Hail of Blades, once again, we've seen how powerful Xin can be if he gets those early ganks up.
I believe you did the numbers, Medic. How much damage is it?
So I did a very, very loose interpretation of the numbers. I kind of worked it out by myself in a practice match.
Some napkin math.
Without Hail of Blades activated, you do 25 DPS as Xin Zhao at level 1. With it, you do 100 DPS as Xin Zhao at level 1. So it's 4 times as much damage. And if anyone doubts me on that, I'm going to say I was very loose, and the numbers may not be correct. Anyway, here comes Fnatic for the invade on towards the red buff. Just going to force Mowgli away from this. Might even be able to leash it back towards himself, but it looks like it's going to fully reset.
And here's the thing. I frankly think that if Mowgli doesn't want to take the smite contest, that he's actually just wasting time and losing priority here. What Fnatic want to do is not just steal the red buff, but they want to create vertical jungling. If they can divide this map, it means that they create a safety net for Hilly and Reckless to constantly be aggressive and push in this lane. And Vitality are flirting with danger because that's still a Braum. If that Q, that Winter's Bite ever connects, they're in trouble.
Here's the thing, though. I think when you say Vitality shouldn't take this fight, I don't think you remember who Vitality are, because they will take every fight they can. Mowgli gets the smite, Hylissang ignited, trying to run away. The heal will get him across alongside the flash. Now Broxah has the flash as well. And it's such a good start for Vitality as they get so much in the jungle.
And Vitality proved me wrong. They planted their feet, they walked over, and they got a massive pulverize right there. So Fnatic tried to take their chances. They felt confident with the Braum Lucian, but it didn't pay off, and that is so much time wasted. And now they don't get the vertical jungling. They don't get to prioritize that side of the map, which means it starts to bleed over into lane-making decisions.
We did talk about the possibility that Broxah could look for a top lane gank early on as well. Maybe he'll just decide to do that now. He's so far behind, though, in terms of jungle experience. He's basically a whole buff behind.
This is not what you wanted to see for a Fnatic fan right now. This puts Broxah at a massive tempo disadvantage in the jungle. And Mowgli, I mean, Gragas level 2, level 3, he can look for those early ganks. Maybe he looks mid lane as Jiizuke is just bowling Nemesis around.
We did see the Galio as a pick into the Aurelia matchup, but often you see, like, it's kind of a skill matchup, usually favored towards the Aurelia. She can just push the wave a little bit quicker in the early game before Galio gets any extra AP to use that Winds of War. So at the moment, I expect Jiizuke to win out in these trades.
You would hope so, with how aggressive he's playing.
It's true, he's about 10 CS up as well, which is a very good position. We have actually just seen the back from Nemesis. He's going to teleport back into the lane with a Dark Seal. Broxah eyeing up his target. Maybe think he can do something here. Jiizuke gets a lot of damage down. There's the Ignite well, but Jiizuke first blood. Nemesis gets it in the 1v1! Nemesis claps the Italian stallion, sends him back to the glue factory.
And casual walk away. This is a huge turn for Fnatic. Nemesis, the guy who said, plays too safe, not going to beat Caps, makes a statement against Jiizuke, who was just trying to throw it down in the lane phase. Overstep, miscalculated, and finally Fnatic are back on the board in the early game in the least likely member.
This replay is brought to you by Alienware, but it looks like Jiizuke just didn't run the numbers.
That's what we're going to call it, was the napkin math from your Hail of Blades Xin Zhao. Yeah. Oh. And, I thought it was just going to freeze there.
That's the face of a man who remembers doing that at the start of last season, and it's like, oh, EU mids, man. These rookie mid laners, they're pretty good. Pretty good at League of Legends.
Tries to go toe-to-toe. Big thing, though, is the fact that Nemesis did burn his flash. Jiizuke still has it, so we'll see if that does impact any aggressive playmaking still in the lane phase, because there's still now this target that Nemesis must be careful. Galio, of course, can wave clear quite safely, just throws out his Wings of War, but if he's ever too far forward, he doesn't have that flash in his back pocket.
See whether Broxah spends a little bit more time around that mid lane as well, trying to keep Nemesis slightly safer. We are 5 minutes in. There's been quite a lot of action. It's about a 500 gold lead for Vitality. A lot of that will be coming from the lane dominance in the top lane, 38 CS to 24, and the mid lane, 35 to 18. And we asked how Vitality won. Well, I asked how Vitality would win the game. You say lane dominance. Now, they've given up a kill in the early game, but they've got strong jungle pathing, and they seem to be winning out the lanes. Is this a good early start for Vitality?
I mean, dying 1v1 in the lane is never going to be...
Let's ignore that bit. Let's look at just the CS numbers, okay? Ignore the 0-1-0 and look at the CS.
Yeah, the Aurelia and the Jace are still okay. Again, the fact that Nemesis doesn't have his flash means that Mowgli can revisit, try to turn the tides of that mid-matchup and get something going. Although, Fnatic also know this.
Broxah here for the counter gank if Mowgli decides to come in. Looks like both the junglers just going to face up against each other. Jiizuke jumps forward, jumps back. It's a pretty easy thing to do on Aurelia.
But while Broxah is, again, spending all of his time in the mid lane, kind of playing around Nemesis and trying to keep him secure, the bot lane is still tipping farther and farther in Cabochard's hands. And bot seems to be okay right now as I'm checking in.
That looks fine.
Nothing broken yet.
Not quite yet, not quite yet. But yeah, we did wonder whether Broxah would be able to have that impactful early game. We talked about the Lee Sin that he played last week, that little bit more aggression they could have on this Sin Zhao. Wanted them to get this bottom lane ahead. They haven't been able to do it yet, even between Attila and Reckless, but you have to expect Fnatic. Now you're getting up towards the level 6 on Nemesis. Now you're getting towards the level 6 on Reckless as well. We'll be looking to get vision control down towards this bottom side and make some plays.
Which is what Mowgli's sensing right now. So I don't think he's actually setting up for a gank unless it just kind of falls into his hands. He does have the Alistar with Flash at Ignite that he can work with, although he's actually going to go for it. If Hilly and Reckless step forward, 100% Jack Troll will pull the trigger and try to force it, but Mowgli's really here because he suspects that Broxah might also be here. He suspects correct.
It's as if our junglers watch each other and just understand what the others can do sometimes.
Nothing to farm.
It's easy enough for the moment. Did actually see Attila go for the Doran's Ring start here on the Kai'Sa. Quite common. Keeps your mana up, means that you can spam out that Q, makes it relatively easy for you just to keep the lane push.
Think of like when Jhin would do the Doran's Ring start.
Give them an inch, they'll take a kingdom.
But now, only 7 minutes into the game, both teams, I think, will be pretty happy with where they are right now. Like, I mean, I've had enough solo queue games recently that have been lost by this point that I look at it, I'm like, no, these guys, it's fine. They're not too far behind. No one's calling FF in chat at the moment for us.
I feel like a lesser team with less experience in Fnatic might have really been shaken by the level 1, the invade that went really sideways, but the fact that Nemesis was able to pull it back, it feels like the jungle stabilized a little bit, and now we're kind of going back to farming, probably some vision control around the mid lane, and start to open up more opportunities to, again, start snowballing ganks on specific targeted lanes.
There are quite a lot of different targets available for Mowgli as he comes through this mid lane, maybe looking up towards the top side, because that's where Broxah is. That red buff going to spawn soon. Of course, Mowgli has a little bit more awareness on the jungle timers because he stole away that blue early on. So now he knows Broxah's around here and he's coming in.
And the scary thing is that if Mowgli does contest Broxah here, he has the backup of Cabochard, whereas Bwipo is forced to back way too low health and doesn't have access to TP. So if Broxah wants to contest this and Vitality pull Cabochard, I think it's free. And it may be even free before Broxah realizes it.
It should be pretty easy for Mowgli. Just secure that there's the smite, hits level 6 as well. Broxah will see that there was a fat man in his jungle. Arcticops just stealing away the red buff.
And this map is starting to look a lot more what Vitality suspected it would in the draft phase. The fact that Aurelia is constantly far forward, has the Alistar behind her just in case, and that Jace is now very heavily winning the matchup.
Jackson actually even coming in towards mid here, maybe just looking for a little bit of a roam, but it's such a strong early game for Vitality, and it's such a contrast to last week where their early game was very, very weak. They were down in gold at the 10-minute mark. They were down in gold at the 15-minute mark. They had a very high kill and assist. It was lots of action. They were dying a lot, and they were getting a lot of kills. But this game seems a lot slower, but they're playing their lanes the way they want to.
Which they're going to have to change up their plan right now, because I actually really like this maneuver from Fnatic. They decide to completely throw it out. They're going to swap to Australian lanes where bot side is now top side. Top's going to be there, and that's the fact that Bwipo is just getting hit so hard in this matchup that now they force 4 members up, and they're going to try to get as much bang for their buck out of this turret plating.
Already got one plating down. Of course, the Demolish will help them with that. Should be able to get a second as well. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, Attila's going for a turret plating of his own. Broxah here, so you can see it's about even at the moment. Fnatic have a slight advantage, but the more that you have around a tower when you take down these platings, the tankier the tower gets. It's called Bulwark. It gets more armor, more magic resist for the amount of people you have around. Vitality going to answer. I think Fnatic has to back off, but Reckless unable to get away. He's just slam dunked down by Vitality. Whippo's going to fall as well. You have to feel just about surviving on 100 HP. Here comes Jiizuke looking for a bit of cleanup. One more trade now as Fnatic have all 5 members up here. There's the Vanguard's end. Only hits one. Broxah pots the Crescent Slash. Great equilibrium strike. The stun lands perfectly from Vitality. And now Nemesis has to run for the wins, but he's turning it back around. The 3-man taunt Jiizuke just about surviving. Broxer and Hillesang looking for the chase. Jack Troll there to body block for his mid laner. Another good stun will keep Jiizuke alive for them. Oh, Hillesang!
Tries to bend it like Beckham around that corner there with the flash Q. Unfortunately unable to connect. And meanwhile, Attila got so much free gold and experience just hitting the tower uncontested down here.
Ours is the land of
What a fight in the top lane. 5v4 and Vitality able to even it out. They now have about 1,500 gold lead, but let's have another look at this one because this was chaotic.
And it was frankly Fnatic just not taking into account that Vitality would eventually respawn. They didn't have correct timers on where Gragas was going to be. He shows up, he manages to hit the cask and deletes Reckless before the fight. Now, good news is that Nemesis is actually in this fight, and he's the guy who's really going to turn it around with a phenomenal flash 3-man taunt. And while Galio is known as being a rather tanky champion, the adjustments to the rune, the fact that he can take Aftershock but still get so much AP, means there's still a lot of burst behind this tank.
And you can see Vitality, they listened to the match of the day video. They're like, oh, Reckless, the sole carry for this team. If we can kill him first, maybe we can win. Jiizuke's like, oh, we got him, guys, good.
That's the face I like to see from the Italian stallion. He knew he hit that stun. He was like, I'm free.
just surviving at the end. Great stuff from Jiizuke. On the other side of that fight, though, Nemesis did a lot of work after a disappointing week 1 where he played too safe, where he wasn't quite able to step into Caps' shoes. This time, he's played so much better.
And I feel like, again, it's hard when you look at Nemesis' stats to take in the whole picture that he was being counterpicked repeatedly. And again, didn't get a lot of draft priority. Maybe Vitality will look back at this game and say, okay, we left open a powerful pick like Galio, and it slowed us down, but hold on.
Once again, Whippo caught out a little bit. Mowgli landed the massive barrel. Explosive cast, that's what it's called.
I'm gonna say a 3-pointer.
Yeah, well, it's a 3-pointer if it goes in the hoop, right? I haven't played a huge amount of basketball, I'll be honest.
It's okay.
You get a 3-point dunk or a 2-point dunk?
I haven't played a lot of football.
Could you get a 3-point dunk? Like, if you jumped from outside the 3-point line and dunked it, would that be 3 points?
I think it really depends on how... No, I'm just gonna say no. I tried.
$2.
I'm sorry.
At LEC Basketball Facts. It's an important place to go. Boxer looking to make a play around the mid lane once again. Interesting that mid lane disparity in terms of CS is actually not as big as I expected it to be. I thought it'd be like 50 or 60. It's only 30.
It's only 12 minutes in the game.
Yeah, but it's only 30 farm difference. You know, like that's not huge. It's big. It's not huge.
It's not huge.
Yeah.
Your napkin match with your hail of blades, you're huge. I see that I'm never gonna hire you as a contractor or an engineer. You think like 6 inches is like a foot long.
Yeah. Are they not the same thing?
No.
So we use Imperial over here in Europe. The standardized that everyone in the world uses.
You measure things in stone.
That's true. But a lot of different stones that you can look at. Now, let's actually take stock of where we are in the game, Frost. You've got Storm Razor finished on towards Attila. No Blade of the Ruin King yet on Reckless, so a slight spike for the Kai'Sa. Now, Irelia has the Tiamat and building up towards a Trinity Force. Almost got the Hextech Proto Belt on Nemesis as well, but the big lead has to be up towards the top lane where Cabochard has already finished his Black Cleaver and can continually try and trade onto Whipper.
And what Vitality want to do is they just want to leave this Kai'Sa undisturbed in the bottom lane, which is why they're putting all of their eggs in the Jiizuke basket. Because as long as they keep Galio locked down here, Kai'Sa is just forcing wave after wave into this tower, and bot lane is really low. So Vitality have some options. Either we can try to counter gank Fnatic, who are going to all in on the top side to force that low tower, or we can just try to trade structures.
Cabo checking the bush with the shock cluster. Hillesang almost in the right place at the right time. Broxer now has snuck in. Mowgli popped the Predator, so they know he's waiting in the wings. Broxer. It's a Fnatic bush. Shh.
They're trying to get Nemesis
His
up there.
vision's based on movement. Here he goes. Broxer jumps in. Cabochard flashes away straight away. Broxer with the chase, but here's Mowgli from the side. Great explosive cast, but knocking back. And Cabo can turn it back on the Broxer. That's one. Mowgli caught out, goes golden. And Jack Troll here to save his jungler. Whipper comes in. Can't quite get the final auto attack, but he does in the end. Whipper will pay for it with his life. 2 kills to Cabochard and Vitality.
And unfortunately, Nemesis still late to the rotation. It looks like the Galio was thinking about coming up. Maybe Fnatic were having some mistimed comms. It looked a little bit messy across the map, but in the end, it's Vitality that really are the big winners here because, again, Fnatic decided to throw everything to try to force the top tower down. Vitality turn it around and are now going to force the tower back in retaliation.
And in the end, you have to think it's Cabochard who's the big winner as well. 3-1-1, building up that lethality. Now he's going to get the first tower goal to himself as well. be sitting on a monumental amount of moolah in that top lane.
And that's exactly where Jace wants to sit. He's right in his power pocket. He's going to be hitting like a truck from long range, and the siege potential from Vitality is pretty dramatic. Now, what's cool is when they approach a tower and Jace does get someone low, watch how Gragas will use his cask to snipe them into danger.
This is the reason you pick up someone like Mowgli. You talk about how mechanically gifted he is.
And again, kind of look at what Nemesis is doing on the map. You can see that he wants to cheat up towards the top side and get involved with his ultimate, but I feel like he's actually locked out from Jiizuke. So either Jiizuke played that really well, or again, maybe some growing pains or messy calms from Fnatic of, are we coming up? Are we going all in? Are we going to cut our losses? What's happening here?
I feel as soon as Mowgli showed up, maybe they should have just backed away. They had a 3v2 advantage if they hadn't been knocked underneath the tower.
Where they fell.
16 minutes into the game, about a 2,500 gold lead for Vitality. We said they wanted to dominate the laning phase. They've managed to do that in 2 out of the 3 lanes, and they've kept that bot lane even, which is so important because that's where Fnatic wanted to snowball.
Yeah, and now all they need to do is set up around this dragon. It's the Mountain Drake, so they love to play around it, and then just make sure that Attila gets free time to hit this. And Fnatic will have to respond, or they'll just lose the objectives for free.
The question is Fnatic's team fight strong enough to push back the might that is Vitality? Jiizuke jumping towards Nemesis here. Mowgli will spot out Boxer on that ward as well, but not really too much going to go on here. I think we have to keep our eyes on Nemesis in these team fights, because a couple of times he's landed incredible flash taunts or just being able to get the knock-up chain that he needs to make these fights turn in Fnatic's favor, and it just feels like such a different Nemesis than last week.
He also has a lot of damage right now because he has finally finished the Proto Belt, so Galio will hurt if he gets a hold of opponents, especially in tandem with Brox's Xin Zhao. So it feels like if Jace is away from the fights, which he doesn't have the TP, it's still okay for Fnatic to try to force these fights. It's when Cabochard starts grouping up with everyone that the edge is going to go to Vitality.
This would be a second dragon for Fnatic if they get it. Mowgli and Jackdaw trying to act as bouncers, just push them away, but you have to think that Fnatic will secure it. Second dragon of the game for them. They have an Infernal and a Mountain in their back pockets. And we talked about like Vitality with bridging and how they have different strengths at different parts of the game. And it's true, you know, Cabochard is incredibly strong right now. He's finished 2 items. Attila's still scaling up, looking for that 3-4 item Kai'Sa. But the question is, if Vitality don't utilize Cabochard's spikes enough in the mid game, is that Kai'Sa going to be strong enough to deal with Fnatic's composition in the late game?
I mean, it's all going to depend on how they're going to team fight. I would never count them out just yet, and it feels like that bot lane tower will finally fall. And Cabochard is still doing a lot of work up into the top side of the map. It has given them Rift Herald control because he's able to push up so far, even though he's taking his back right now. So while Fnatic were the ones who got the Mountain Drake because Cabochard was top, it's still Vitality, I feel, that wins out in the longer trade because they have command of the Rift Herald, which should mean mid-tower will fall soon.
Definitely should. Have to watch as they use that Rift Herald, because we have seen it used haphazardly a few times across the course of the LEC. Whether Vitality have perfected the use of their Rift Herald is a sight we have yet to see at this split. Split is the word I was going to say tournament, but it's more than a tournament. It is Europe. It is the LEC. It is this split. And now you see Cabochard moves down towards the bottom lane. It's like, okay, we can pressure on 2 sides of the map at once. We've already got the Rift Herald. Don't need to fight up towards top side anymore. We'll bring down Cabochard and we'll put Jiizuke up towards the top lane.
I'd actually like to see Cabo group with his team, simply because they do have command over the Rift Herald. They want to use it on this mid tower. And again, the Jace is so potent and powerful at sieging, especially right now. So I'd like to see him just kind of hoover up some of these waves into the side lane and then very quickly cut up the top river or cut up the bottom river and join his team.
And you can use that with the Rift Herald as well. Look for that big 6-man push in the mid lane. But Vitality at the moment just denying vision, getting that river control, which is what we want to see if you're having the Jace roam up and roam down. And Fnatic not really able to answer it too easily at the moment. Nemesis is up top dealing with Jiizuke as best he can. Brock's actually caught off a little bit to the side of this. It's going to be a 4v4 fight, you have to think. You can see Whipper on his way up as well, but already Hylissang is down. Brock's just getting chased out by Jackdaw as well. He's going to have to flash the wall to chase him from Attila. Runs all the way in. Nemesis comes in way too late. That's not the entrance of a hero. Eventually they're going to try and turn it around, but a great explosive cast from Mowgli will knock them all back. Attila gets the double. Fnatic took the bite, but Vitality come out on top.
That is much cleaner play from Attila this time around. It's no more dying solo in the lane as the Vayne. It's the Kai'Sa with the flash over the wall to disengage himself from the wings of war from Galio. Very well done from Attila that time around.
And Baron about to spawn as well. Put the Rift Herald mid and go for Baron. That's exactly what Vitality are going to do. Cabochard teleporting into this. Can Nemesis and Reckless actually do anything about it?
And this time around, Vitality, we'll see if Baron works out better. It was the thorn in their side against Splice, and Nemesis is here for the defense.
It's a lot easier when you're only playing against one man. Nemesis trying to defend, gets the taunt off. Baron down to about 5,000 HP. Hillesang on the way. Reckless here. You've got to fight it. Fnatic, here comes the teleport. They want the fight. Cabochard flashes away. Baron's going to go to Vitality. That's secured. But what can Fnatic get off the back of it? Vanguard's dead. Hillesang goes golden. Jumps onto the back line. Whippo gets one. That's the shutdown. Hillesang's going to fall as well, but now Jiizuke goes down. 2-for-1 trade. Mowgli should fall off the back of this as well. Brox are not quite able to get towards him. Mowgli actually might get his recall off here. With the empowered recall, Mowgli gets away.
And with no hesitation, Vitality pull the trigger. They immediately grab hold of the Baron, and they manage to get 3 of the buffs out. I think that was best case scenario for Fnatic. They recognize we can't contest the smite. Brox is nowhere near, so they just wanted to kill as many members as possible.
Is it enough though? 21 minutes into the game, Vitality have a 4,000 gold lead. They have a Baron buff remaining on Mowgli, Attila, and Jack Troll, so they have the option to split up a little bit if they need to.
Taking another look at this, I mean, Nemesis did all of the work that he could. He was super tanky because he was the Galio. He managed to pull off 3 members, which meant that the Baron was taking more people down in the pit, and eventually it was enough time for Hilly and Reckless to get into position. I do like the fact that Hilly knew that he was probably going to die here. He wanted to set up the team fight as much as possible, so trades his life for deleting some of those Barons.
Mowgli does a good job to get away here as well. Flashes, gets the blast cone, and then they realize that with the empowered recall, he is able just to escape. There's a fight going on though. Vitality fighting in the mid lane. Killer instant used by Attila to get himself to safety, but Jack Troll is the one that will be caught out. Already one of those Barons is down. And it's very good stuff from Fnatic. Have to see exactly how that fight started.
Yeah, still 2 Barons left though on the ADC as well as the jungler. So like you were saying, the ability that they could use it in multiple lanes, but it feels like this Baron from Vitality. Hold on!
Again! Mowgli just oversteps. He's done. He's cold. Reckless steps up to the plate with the first kill of the game for himself.
Looked away for a second, felt a bit like Whiplash. Fnatic, you give them an inch and they take a mile. They are deleting Vitality, and it feels like that momentum that they had from the Baron has very quickly hit a roadblock.
Yeah, it's so strange. You know, Vitality get the Baron with 3 members escaping, and it's Fnatic who are on the front foot, making these plays, getting their 3rd Dragon of the game here, you would expect as well. And finally, we're starting to see Reckless be a little bit more impactful in these fights as well. He said it himself. He is the one that needs to step up and carry this team. Just got his first kill of the game. Now on the Lucian, almost at 2 items. Is he going to have enough impact?
And the nice thing is if you look at Vitality's composition, because they don't have a traditional tank, you know, there's no Sion, there's no Sejuani, it means that Reckless will be that much more impactful, that much longer on the Lucian. He's going to be able to do a lot of damage to these squishier targets. So this should actually be a better 5v5 for Fnatic. And again, if you look at their losses against SK, they were still doing pretty decent a lot of those team fights. It was the early game that were the problems.
Definitely agree with you there. Fnatic always been known as a very strong team fighting team. Vitality, on the other hand, didn't have the explosive early game that they could have had, but they did dominate the lanes. They did get ahead. You've still got a 30 CS advantage in mid and a 30 CS advantage in that top lane.
And that's exactly what their composition was supposed to do, but paint by numbers. It's now time for Vitality to learn how to color the lines in when they don't have the lane phase kind of the direction. And this is where they've really been struggling, is some of these macro decisions across the map. I liked the ferocity that they attacked the Baron with. It was just unfortunate that it was kind of pick after pick after pick that had a knock-on effect to slow them down.
A Tiger has a very strong bite, but it's hard to tell it how to, you know, position things properly on a map, you know? It will go aggressive. It will be very good at going aggressive and getting those claws out. But when you try and fire those claws down, Tigers get angry.
You got weird analogies, Medic.
Yeah. It worked in my head. That's 90% of the things I say work in my head. Sometimes don't quite translate.
It's fine. I'm just here for the ride.
I've been sick this week. I'll blame it on like fever dreams. Fever dreams. Okay, so what are the next steps? You said you want to see Vitality, you know, color in between the lines. It would show us a little bit more of a game plan as to how they play. We talked about bridging composition. Now you've got to the point where the Kai'Sa is truly coming online with that Zhonya's.
Yeah, I was going to say next steps. It feels like Attila, with the Hourglass and the stasis available, and for how aggressive he's been playing, it feels like Vitality want to start throwing Shock Blast, hit one nuke on a team, and then just send Kai'Sa in. Like Attila's going to have the confidence to just be like, I'm flying in, I'm going to stasis, they're going to jump on me, and we're just going to rip them apart. So, again, that aggression from Vitality coming out. But
It's the catapult Kai'Sa composition.
catapult.
Although those are the inferior siege weapons.
He doesn't have to fly in. I mean, it's obviously just a good item because he's the
Yep.
ADC and he's pretty fragile.
Nah,
but
I've watched enough Vitality to know that he needs to fly in.
I've just been very impressed with how forward he's playing. I love it when ADCs try to skirt that line of outputting as much damage as possible before they're shut out, as opposed to being, you know, like KDA protectors. I can't die here. I've been zoned out of the fight. I'm gone.
I mean, that was a big debate that came around last year. It was like Reckless, this guy who would play team fights really well, but usually played things like the Sivir, Tristana, a little bit safer on the backline, and Attila, the emotional Portuguese carry who would step to the plate and be like, okay, take me on. I'll 1v1 you. We'll see who wins, right? I'll take the 50-50 play. And now this year, it feels like Attila's beginning to step up into that S-tier level of AD carry here in Europe alongside like the Hans Summers or the Recklesses of the world. And this may be the game that he feels he has to jump in and prove it.
I mean, he's feeling very confident. 2-0-2. Again, itemization completely set up for it as we're actually setting up the triangle vision around the Baron area. So Vitality have made it very clear what they want to do, which is in this next 30 seconds, they want to take control of this triangle around the red buff, have complete vision control, and make space for Cabochard to take whatever he wants.
Much better vision control from Vitality than we saw last week against Schalke around that Baron. This is the perfect game that Yamato talked about. These are the steps you have to take if you're going to play around the Baron effectively. Cabochard gets the tower in the bot lane because of the push from the rest of Vitality.
And it's also just where Vitality's composition is really strong when they fight in the jungle like this because of their ability to isolate targets with the Gragas ultimate. And if Cabochard is grouped up with them, Jace's damage from Fog of War. Once a team has complete control of an area with control wards, you just start throwing shock blasts from darkness. It's definitely going to hurt.
Yeah. Just need a Zoe and a Karthus on this composition to really round out that poke damage. Nah, no one would do that. That's too dirty. Who would play Zoe and Karthus on the same composition?
I have a feeling that Origin still wake up in like a hot sweat
Just hot
from that game.
sweats at night. PTSD from playing against G2 in week 1. Have to see what G2 bring out because, of course, they and Misfits, the only two undefeated teams in the LEC at the moment at 2-0.
So we're coming up to a critical moment where it's past 25 minutes in the game. So the minion changes have gone through. So the cannons are going to be spawning on the waves. And then if Vitality do manage to get this Baron, with the composition of Gragas, of Kai'Sa, of Jace, their chances of ending the game almost immediately off that Baron are astronomical. I mean, Vitality would have to like grind or throw away the Baron buff by like just feeding in one after another to not lose the game at that point. So this is it for Fnatic. They must hold here.
Mowgli just checking that bush with his barrel. You can see Fnatic realize that what Vitality want is that triangle of vision around that red buff, and they're denying it as much as possible. Control ward, control ward, control ward. And ward in the pit as well. Looks like they do not have a control of their own. Is a control of their own just getting cleared out.
But then Vitality still have the onus in that we don't actually have to start the Baron. We can just waste Fnatic's time because Jace will eventually win this side lane or continue to whittle down. So Fnatic again are in a very tough decision. You know, do they try to use a swing play by using Galio's mobility through Hero's entrance to gank Cabochard on a side lane? And does that mean that Vitality then immediately turn on the Baron? Or do they try to force a pick here and try to take Vitality on 4v5?
You do still have the TP advantage. If Nemesis or Whippo are in that side lane, they can teleport back towards a Baron fight, whereas only Cabochard has teleport on the side of Vitality. I want to have a quick look at just Vitality's vision control around this red buff area as we see them pushing out the mid lane. You can see, not as deep as they'd like. Jacktroll checking into no vision here as well. If Fnatic wanted to, if they wanted to make that pull the trigger play, if they wanted to make a snap decision, there are a few opportunities for them here and they're going to do it. Straight on towards Jiizuke. There's the taunt, the stun. Temple comes in as well. So Whippo joining the fight. Jiizuke trying to get away. The Vanguard's ended. Isn't enough. There's one. Jacktroll now. He jumped in as well. He's going to get locked up and taken out. You have to feel Fnatic find the point they needed, find the pick that they wanted, and they take down 2.
Excellently played. Nemesis is still on the chase, but it looks like Fnatic say, this is fine. We delayed the Baron. We alleviated the pressure from the top side because both teleports were burned, and now we're going to slowly move in and clear out all of this vision.
Okay, so the last time we saw a team take the Baron, it was Vitality, and they paid dearly for it. 2 lives went down, and they lost the next dragon. Fnatic going to start this one up here. Whippo coming in as well, but you've still got Attila alive, and that ultimate is available. Nemesis tries to jump out. Look at how low box it is. Has to use a smite. Whippo jumps onto Attila. Attila can't get away. He's locked up in the steadfast presence, but the flash keeps him alive. Reckless shows the wall. Reckless down. zone. AD for AD. Vitality and Fnatic trade.
Yeah, but that said, Reckless goes over the wall. He does manage to kill Attila, but they force Vitality off the Baron. So Fnatic are still able to claw themselves back into the game. They've now swept out all the vision, and they've effectively put a reset on this map.
Still 5,000 gold lead for Vitality. They'll be pretty happy that they stopped Fnatic from doing this Baron.
So we take another look at this replay. I frankly think it was just the map got separated for Vitality. They weren't able to gather up, group up, and use kind of that poke advantage that they have. Jiizuke got caught. They weren't paying attention to how they were coming around the fog of war, and it was just really patient play from both teams, but Fnatic just having that slight edge.
As we fast forward, I do want to highlight Whippo here as well. Comes in from the side, spots Attila out of position, knows that Fnatic are low, and he says, okay, I'm going in, guys, we can stop this. Steadfast presence to stop Attila getting away with the ultimate.
I actually don't mind Reckless going over the wall here. Yes, it does mean that he's dead, and maybe you can take a step back and say, you know, if he hadn't gone over the wall, if he didn't kill himself, maybe Fnatic turn on that Baron because they have the ADC. But I like the mentality and the mindset here. Reckless said he wants to be the carry. He's done taking a step back, and he proved it right there. He's going to step forward, he's going to play aggressive, and he's going to go over that wall.
Attila said it's time for a change in the preview video that we had, and Reckless says, okay, I'll change, I'll go aggressive, I'll jump on you, I'll try and take you out in the pure 1v1 at the end of a fight. Nemesis, having such a good game so far, has now picked himself up a Medjay as the upgrade of that Dark Seal. Whippo jumped in here, trying to get onto Mowgli. They're going to land the Glacial Fissure as well, but that's a lot invested. Jackdaw actually off towards the side of this is going to have to flash away himself. Both teams just trading abilities in the mid lane.
But Fnatic knowing that they can go aggressive there, because again, there's no TPs on top laners, and they have vision on Cabochard being on the bottom side of the map. So Fnatic, the communication seems fine right now that they're in their comfort zone of that 5v5 of those team fights. They want to fight now, and Nemesis will hit like a truck with all of those Medjays.
As the flash, Jackdaw's going to jump on towards him. There's the taunt, doesn't land on anyone. Stunned up now, Nemesis in the middle of it, goes golden. Vitality just trading back onto it. Nemesis has to flash away, and Whippo caught out. Hero's entrance comes down, only hits Jiizuke, but he's chucked out. Nemesis, the three-man taunt lands it! Can Reckless do enough? No, a great flawless duet from the stun. Jiizuke lands it on three again, and they're just going to turn it around. The jump onto the back line, Fnatic get cleaned off the face of Summoners ripped by Vitality.
Where Nemesis takes control of the early game, Jiizuke takes control of the late game. That was a phenomenal ultimate from the Aurelia, cleans up Fnatic, and Vitality are now shoving it down the mid lane.
You have to feel that's it. Vitality found the perfect team fight in the mid game. Fnatic had been clawing their way back, but Vitality slammed the door in their face, and they look like they're going to win this game.
And the death timers are just too long. The structures are melting Vitality. It was a little shaky in the mid game, but it was paid off in that last team fight.
We saw them both at Worlds last year. Well, Vitality show they are the kings of LEC at the moment as they take down Fnatic.
Still getting used to it. You're like the kings of EULCS.
It's LEC. Great stuff, though, from Vitality. And, of course, if you're a Fnatic fan, a little bit worried that 0-3 now, not in the best of shapes.
But it's still a very different look. First things first, though, huge win for Vitality. They said this is going to be our year, that we are going to lift the title at some point. They're going to have to go through the old kings, and they took down Fnatic very early on. They're going to have another shot at it later on in the season, but so far it looks like Vitality have successfully turned the page.
Yeah, slowly working their way towards that perfect game of League of Legends that Yamato was talking about, and looking much more like a playoffs contender, like a team that can actually challenge when it comes towards the end of the season. Fnatic, on the other hand, I would be incredibly buoyed if I am this team after watching this game, if I'm a fan, because you look at it, Nemesis played well, Reckless had some good moments. Yes, you had one bad team fight at the end, but apart from that, you played to your win condition, and you got to the point where you wanted to be.
I think it's a game that a lot of teams will be looking at the tape on. Again, it's a different way that Fnatic lost.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it wasn't just Nemesis who got shot out again. He was making a lot of proactive plays in the early game, managed to turn around some of that poor initial level 1 invade. So it's no longer that you can just put a blanket statement on Fnatic and say, you know,
shut down Nemesis, you win the game.
It's Nemesis' fault. You can just beat him like this. It's a completely different problem.
But one, I am sure they won't be too sad to have, because Nemesis didn't get shut down, didn't get absolutely isolated by Jiizuke, even though he could have done. We saw early game Jiizuke was ahead, and then Nemesis just gets the 1v1 kill. Awas gets straight back on into the game. It's just such an explosive end to the game. Like, for the first 12 minutes, we had one kill and just some turret placings went down, and then everything exploded into action. And if you got a Baron, it looked like your team would lose afterwards.
I really do want to compliment the precision, deliberates, and patience of Vitality around that Baron. It felt like they really learned from their mistakes across from Splice and Schalke. They were so much more patient in how they were setting up their vision. Yes, Jiizuke got caught a couple of times, but he made up for it more than that in that final team fight with a massive Aurelia play. So I'm willing to let it go, and as it seems that Vitality are very clearly looking at the VODs and figuring out what went wrong.
That's what you've got to do in a league as stacked as the LEC. Each week you have to improve, you have to step up to the plate, because otherwise you are going to be left in the dust. And you wonder, like, with so many new organizations, with so many new names, so many big names coming into the LEC, are we going to see teams like Fnatic, teams like Splice, teams like maybe even G2 or Misfits left in the dust from these guys that are really beginning to step up?
I think it means that consistency is more key than it has ever been before, because the middle of the pack, it doesn't feel like there's, you know, Fnatic, G2, and then just this massive gap between all the other teams, that everyone is competitive. So you must have the consistency to win every single time, because the playoff race is going to be that much tighter.
Especially with our new playoffs format as well, of course, rewards you for getting placed first or second a lot more than it used to do. Vitality, not a team that I would think of synonymous with consistency, though. So we do need to see a little bit more from them before we can, you know, really put them up there with the big dogs. But throughout the split, we'll be giving out key player of the game after every game, highlighting the standout performances from the best in Europe. For our match of the day, which was this game, we've got Cabochard, Jiizuke, and Attila as your options. I actually think it's a tough one, because I think each of them played well at different portions of the game. Like Attila diving on that backline and then flashing over the wall, that was incredible. Jiizuke's final fight was really, really good. But then Cabochard's laning phase, that was super strong for the entirety of it.
For me, I'm going to lean towards Jiizuke, just because I felt like he was the high-impact difference maker in a lot of those key fights, not just necessarily in that last fight that we saw, but also in the one over the Mountain Drake or in the river, or maybe it was an Infernal Drake. So I would lean towards the Aurelia, but that's just me.
I mean, it's also easy to lean towards the person in the mid lane that's making the flashy play. So as a support main, I lean towards other things. I know you're an AD carry main. I'm sure, you know, if Reckless had been there, if Attila had made a couple more fights, you'd be like, oh yeah, sure, give it to Attila. He's the best. AD carries, woo.
If he had gone into the backline and used the hourglass to like turn the fight, would have been like, give it to the Portuguese powerhouse.
He was golden.
Attila.
You've got to give him the gold medal. Anyway, for more on Vitality's win, let's check in with Dracos and their coach.